one more time, welcome. And it's amazing that you could make it. And let me very quickly open the title of the session. I got lost among my papers. So Kees, today we're going to talk about global reporting standards, right? And Kees Krul is postdoctoral researcher at Rotterdam School of Management, but also, very interestingly, founder of Sustainability Reports, which is, I think, isn't it the biggest company globally that has this whole fantastic resource database of the different sustainability reports?
Yeah, it's by now the largest online database of sustainability reports from companies.
Amazing. So, Kees, thank you so much for joining us tonight, or at least for most of us tonight in Europe here, and with our colleagues joining from US, it's morning. And the screen is yours. I know you had some presentation, so we probably will start with some introductory thoughts, and we will continue with the discussion. So over to you.
Sounds very good. Yes. And I think my screen is visible now. Is that correct, Asri?
Yes, it's visible in the presentation, not the presentation mode, but you can either use this bookmark. I think it's more comfortable because the bookmark will allow you to see us as well.
Is it full screen now? Because I can still see. Okay, I can still see you. So
yes, no worries. That's
great.
good.
Yeah.
That's good if you can see us.
Yeah. No, I had a discussion earlier today about Zoom versus Teams. So at my university, we're all at Teams now. So Zoom is a bit foreign for me, but great. I figured out the technology as well.
No worries, all worked very well. And yeah, so let's hear you, and then we move to the questions. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for your kind introduction, Irene. Very happy to be here. It's my honor to give you a short introduction about sustainability reporting and the global standards. I should start with a short disclaimer that I'm not specifically focusing on DEI. Of course, I care a lot about it, and also in my own work, I read about it, but I'm by no means an expert in DEI. So later, if you have questions, just keep that in mind. I'm more focusing on corporate sustainability, which of course includes DEI, but I'm not specifically focusing on DEI by itself. And the second disclaimer is that I'm also focusing more on large corporations, and that's for the simple reasons that sustainability reports, as it is still currently practiced, is mostly done by the large corporations and especially the listed companies, and that excludes a lot of the SMEs. But I'm not sure if this was discussed earlier. Of course, with new regulations, we can also see that sustainable reporting becomes more relevant for the SMEs as well. And I hope at the end of my presentation, I have some tools for you that you maybe find useful, and that you can also use for your own project. So without further ado, let me just briefly introduce myself. Of course, Irene already gave me a nice introduction. And as she mentioned, I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at the Rotterdam School of Management at Erasmus University in the Netherlands. So my research currently focuses on corporate sustainability and corporate purpose, two very interesting topics that are very relevant today. And my background is in institutional economics. And from that approach, I'm also very interested. So I like to compare firms' behavior across different countries, and my specialty there then is in Asia. So that's what I like to do, and that's what I work on as my job as a researcher. But at the same time, I'm also the founder and CEO of sustainabilityreports.com. That is a startup that I started about 2 years ago, and that came from my own frustration that actually there was no clear centralized database and a research-friendly database of sustainability reports. Companies are every year spending a lot of energy and money as well in drafting all those sustainability reports, but I actually felt that it was difficult to retrieve them, and for research, it's actually very difficult to access them as well in a more centralized manner. So by now, sustainabilityreports.com, it is the largest online database of corporate sustainability reports. So we index about 10,000 global firms. And in total, we have about 40,000 PDF files that we share. In addition to that, so we have a database. We also offer a free AI-powered librarian, and that really helps for custom retrieval of sustainability information. So, for instance, if you're curious about the DEI practices of some large, let's say, Finnish electronics company, you can actually ask it directly. So it's kind of a ChatGPT, but then specifically tailored on sustainability information and trained on all the data that we have collected from the sustainability report. So it can be a really useful tool, and that's something I will talk later at the end of this talk. Then finally, sustainability reports, I like to really see it as a dual purpose company. So there's a profit motive, but also there's a purpose motive. And the way I like to see it is really to keep as much as tools free, and then offer premium data services just to keep to be able to keep the platform running and to keep it free. But of course, that's not what I was invited for today. I can talk obviously about myself for a long time, but that's not what I want to do, and that's also not why I'm here. So instead, my goal of this presentation, and I will try to keep it within 40 minutes or something, so we also have some time for a Q&A at the end. And Ausrin, please feel free to interrupt me if I go on too long and if I need to cut it off. Yes, I see a thumbs up. Great. So I divided it in 5 parts, and the goal is really to give you a basic introduction of sustainability reporting, and also really try that it can be useful for your project that you're working on for the next 2 weeks. So I started with a basic introduction, then I will discuss a little bit about the history and evolution. Then the main part of my presentation is the reporting process itself. So I will discuss a little bit what kind of data is in it, who are actually the stakeholders interested in the reports, but also what are the next processes or the next steps of that, how is it distributed, etc. The fourth, and I think that's important, are some of the current challenges and trends of sustainability reports. So what should we be mindful of when we talk about sustainability reporting? And as I mentioned before, I will end this presentation hopefully with some helpful tools that you can use from a product that is provided by my startup. All right, so let's start with the basics first. So, what is sustainability reporting? When we talk about it, of course, we hear a lot about it lately, and it has grown very influential. But what is it actually? So let's just break it down into the 2 words that it consists of. Sustainability, and this was, I believe, mentioned by Asreen yesterday as well in her opening talk. Sustainability is usually, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about 3 different pillars or dimensions. There's the economics, there's the environmental, and there's the social. And in business, we also sometimes talk about the profits, the planet, and the purpose. So the triple P. And another way to talk about it, this has many synonyms. It's a triple bottom line. This really kind of extends the bottom line, which traditionally was the financial performance, the profits. So the conventional idea was that companies should just focus on the bottom line, which is the profits. Now we talk about the triple bottom line. So actually, all those 3 dimensions should be considered equally, and there should be a bare minimum for each company to participate in, to ensure sustainable development. Then the reporting, I think that's much easier to explain, right? That is the practice of disclosing these impacts to the stakeholders, and stakeholders can be many. I will discuss those in a moment. So then if you combine it, we have sustainability reporting, which really continues from the long-standing practice of financial reporting. Financial reporting is something that has been invented, I believe, hundreds of years ago. And for a very long time, that has been the main focus. So companies would be publishing annual financial reports, which kind of summarizes all the financial achievements that a company has been doing over the past year. And then investors can read those reports and can see, okay, is this company doing good or is it bad? Should I invest in this company? Should I not invest in this company? And parallel now to that, and that's a trend of, I would say, the last 25 years, we've seen that companies worldwide are more and more also publishing, aside from the annual financial reports, an annual sustainability report. Sometimes, and that is, I think, getting a bit more common lately, over the last 5 or 10 years or so, companies are publishing integrated reports. So instead of publishing an annual financial report and an annual sustainability report, they just prepare one single integrated report. I've been talking a lot about companies because I think companies, they are the main kind of entity that is engaged in sustainability reporting, but it's also important to mention that it's not just corporations. I believe my own university here, Erasmus University, we also published an annual sustainability report. NGOs, non-government organizations, also sometimes publish sustainability reports, but also countries sometimes publish those kind of reports. Still, it is mainly corporations, and as I just mentioned at the start of this presentation, usually it is the listed corporations and the large corporations. Listed corporations are the ones that are publicly traded on stock markets. Why is it that? It's usually because they have shareholders, and the shareholders expect companies to also be able to see what they are doing about sustainability. So it's kind of expected and demanded from shareholders. Private companies, those are the companies that are sometimes family owned or are not publicly traded, they usually don't have this pressure from shareholders. So what we can see is that most often it is the listed companies. They very frequently publish sustainability reports, especially the large ones. Almost all of them do it. But private companies, they may not publish sustainability reports or do it in a very different form. And in addition to a formal report, of course, companies, they also do it on social media and other campaigns where they might share some snippets. Ultimately, then the kind of the main goal of sustainability reporting from company is really to increase the transparency and accountability and really show that it's making efforts to go beyond financial performance and hopefully to make the world a bit of a better place. That will be nice, of course. All right,
So,
then the second
Kees,
part, history and evolution.
may I quickly share a comment or question for clarification?
Of course.
Because I think it's very important for everyone. So the way we heard from Tauno that there, again, there are lots of laws, but if you think of to whom it applies in practice, it's actually not the SMEs or like not directly to SMEs. And I think what you were saying now, it's really important that, there are a lot of ways to report sustainability, but none of this is really obligatory, isn't it? So it's more of, your own voluntary action. So if I think of it, it's like I should be really committed to it and commit resources to it to make a report, isn't it? Just to clarify for our audience.
You're extremely right, Arvin. We will get to that later. But it's a very good point, and that's also where a lot of the frustration is currently, is that it's a very voluntary process. Yeah, so companies are expected to do it, but how they do it, that is another question, and we will get to that later for sure. Yeah. So if you look at the history and evolution of sustainability reporting, we can see that it started somewhere in the 70s. And usually it was done by companies that were in environmentally sensitive industries. So you can think of oil companies or mining companies. They would sporadically and in a very unstructured way report something, and mostly it was about environmental disclosures. So in the beginning, we had environmental reports. Before the sustainability reports, it was more common to just publish a dedicated environmental report. Then for reasons I'm also not sure, it kind of died out a little bit in the 80s and in the 90s. And then in the mid 90s, we could really see a consolidation or I would say mainstream adaptation of sustainability reporting. Then it really started to take off. An important player here that we cannot avoid talking about it is the Global Reporting Initiative that was founded in 1979. And in 2000, they also published the first guidelines. And that was really a pivotal moment for companies to actually become serious about sustainability reporting. So as you can see in the graph here, that's compiled from my own database, you can really see that since the 2000s, in the last 25 years, sustainability reporting has been really taking off. And especially over the last 10 years, we can really see that more and more companies are adopting it. And this is really a global phenomenon. In most countries, the main companies in most countries, they do publish sustainability reports now. So I would say the last 25 years is really categorized by mainstream adoption and integration of sustainability reporting as part of the core strategy of businesses. And currently, I would say we're having a lot of debates and talks about new regulatory requirements to actually how can we structure sustainability reporting. And this is exactly what Ashwin just mentioned. Um, it has been very voluntary, and this has caused a lot of problems. So we can see that now, and I think the EU CSRD, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, is a very powerful instrument that actually mandates companies now to do sustainability reporting. So it's no longer voluntary; they have to do it, and there are different rules for which companies have to do it. We might be able to talk about that later in the questions and answers section. But it's important to mention that there's a lot of regulations being talked about now to actually see how we can make this more structured and mandatory. All right, then the reporting process. So a fundamental question, of course, this is divided in 4 parts. First of all, why do companies even bother about reporting? Especially as Arjun mentioned, if it's voluntary, then yeah, why would you even spend time and money in drafting such a report? Well, first of all, there's compliance. Sometimes it's just required, and now I think this is an ongoing trend, especially in the EU, where if you like it or not, you just have to do it because it's mandated by the EU or some other organization. Um, that's a very obvious reason. But I think more interesting is also there's a reason for stakeholder engagement. And as I just mentioned before, usually shareholders and investors, they are very interested in looking at the sustainability data from companies because for them it's a risk. So, for instance, if there's a company which is polluting a lot of emissions, and you know that next year in that country there will be a new regulation that's really punishing companies hard that are polluting a lot of emissions. So, for instance, they are getting extra fines or they have to pay extra money, and maybe they even have to close down the factory because of these new regulations. Then, of course, if you're an investor and you're thinking about where you want to put your money in, then this can be an important kind of data point for you to know. So that's why investors, they have a very deep interest, not just in the financial performance of companies, but also in the sustainability reporting of companies, sustainability performance of companies, because ultimately this might in fact affect the financial performance of a company as well. At the same time, it's not only investors, also customers or consumers like yourself may be interested in knowing what a company is doing. Probably, if let's say you buy a t-shirt and that company that you buy it from is actually affiliated with child labor, of course, you hopefully you will think twice about actually buying that product from that company. So that's another reason why sustainability reporting might also be directly relevant to you. And also communities, they are of course directly or indirectly impacted by the behavior of a company. So they also have a direct interest in knowing more. So kind of to respond to those different demands from all those different stakeholders, companies use sustainability reports to engage with the stakeholders. And we will talk a bit more about that in the next slide, where I list a few stakeholders. Thirdly, then, and this is something that is interesting, it's the strategic goals. So aside from compliance and stakeholder engagement, companies may also have a direct own incentive to publish sustainability reports. And this is a bit the dark side, I think, of sustainability reporting. It has been used a lot to enhance their reputation. So if you look at a sustainability report, and I can really recommend you to look at it, usually they look really beautiful. There's nice pictures, people are laughing, happy people. It's really like it's beautiful, and companies are also showing that really the beautiful side of their business in those reports. But it has been criticized, obviously, that actually those reports have been used as a PR vehicle just to increase their reputation. And a term that we frequently use here is greenwashing. If you don't know what's that term, greenwashing, as it kind of may sound, is really that companies are using kind of the green efforts or the actions they do to benefit society as a way maybe to conceal the things that are not going so well in the company or certain scandals that they have. So they're using those reports to camouflage the actually real practicing happening internally in the company. So that is a very important note when we talk about sustainability reporting. But then on a more optimistic side, if companies actually are honest in their assessments of sustainability, this may also help them actually to identify area that may impose new risks for the company. So often, especially by academics, it's often emphasized that if a company is really honest about sustainability reporting, it can really help them to identify certain risks and also to implement measures that will improve the internal workings of the companies. Usually it's a combination, as I mentioned before. So why do companies report? Usually it's a combination of the three. We can see that now with new regulations, compliance has become more important, but stakeholder engagement, especially with the age of internet now, where it's very easy if a company is doing something wrong, for someone to go on social media and to create some kind of campaign and to go viral on that. It has become important to have a positive engagement with different stakeholders and strategic goals. That obviously is always important for a company. Then for whom do companies actually publish those sustainability reports or engage in sustainability reporting? There are many stakeholders. I just list a few here that I think are the most relevant ones, but there may be many more. So for investors, that's something I already discussed. So they're usually interested in risk. Sustainability does impose risk for them as well. So they just want to know what the company is doing about sustainability. For regulators, like governments, they of course are interested to see what companies are actually doing and if they comply to the law and standards, so to speak, to be a good corporate citizen for the country. NGOs then, non-governmental organizations, they often use those reports to really try to understand if companies really stick to the claims. So in those reports, companies are usually making beautiful statements. They're making bold claims, and for NGOs, this can be useful to actually check if those companies are really walk the talk, so to speak. For customers, that's also what I just mentioned. I think most customers hopefully will be interested in knowing if a company is actually a good company, if they're an ethical company, if they don't engage in child labor or climate extraction, so resource extraction, or contribute to climate change, etc. Then for students and academics, of course, we often analyze companies' reports and see what kind of impact it has. A very common research interest by many academics is actually to see if a company publishes a report and actually what does it do with the financial performance of that company. So does it go up or does it go down? This can also happen, of course. So those are just some of the stakeholders that are relevant when we talk about sustainability reporting. But again, there may be many others. All right, then the third component of the reporting process is what information do we actually include in the sustainability report? Usually, and what I mentioned in the beginning, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about three dimensions: environment, society, and economy. This is what you can see in the left picture here. So if all those three pillars come together, then we have something that we call sustainable development. And that's really important to be mindful of all those three different dimensions in order to make the world more sustainable and a better place for all of us. But this kind of approach where we look at them separately and then hope that if we overlay them, we have some kind of small bit of sustainable development has been criticized. And now it's more common to talk about something called strong sustainability. And the main difference here is that we make a certain hierarchy between the different dimensions. So we have economy in the middle, then society, and then nature. So this is the right picture. So the premise here, or the assumption here, is that a healthy economy can only function in a healthy society. So imagine that if you have a company and you have a society where all your people are permanently sick, um, then of course it will be impossible to find employees that can actually work for you. Or if you have customers with zero money to spend, then also it's very difficult to have a thriving business in that society. So the idea is here that an economy, a healthy economy, can only function in a healthy society. But then, can a healthy society actually function if we do not have a healthy nature or a healthy environment? Um, at the same time, can a healthy economy work in an unhealthy environment? The economy still depends to a large extent on resource extraction, so natural resources provided by Mother Earth. Um, that's a vital element. And in fact, see, we have exploited all those natural resources. Then I think it's also very difficult to have an economy running. And at the same time, can a healthy society? I think we are still very dependent on nature just for our own happiness and well-being. Um, can we actually live without nature? So the main idea of strong sustainability is that we first need a healthy planet and healthy earth and healthy ecosystem to support and have society, and then we can have a healthy economy with healthy companies in it. So if we accept that sustainability then has those three different dimensions, then it becomes really tricky because then we have to find a way to actually start reporting that. So start to structure that into data. And that is an extremely difficult challenge. Financial accounting is already a very contested field. There are many ways we can go about it, but I think sustainability reporting is even more complicated simply because we have more dimensions and we have much less experience about how we can account for sustainability. So one innovation here is the ESG indicators. So that stands for environmental, social, and governance. And that's a way to kind of structure sustainability reporting. Um, so the environmental, then we often talk about carbon emissions, energy use, waste management. And sometimes that is quantitative. So sometimes we can put it in numbers to it, like carbon emissions. It's a bit more straightforward because we can measure it from space. We can see how much emissions are actually being polluted in the air. We can put a fixed number to that, and also we can see over time if there's a reduction in that or not. So that's quite straightforward. But for waste management, it might become a bit more complicated already, and also for energy use or other facets of the environmental dimension. For social, then, we often talk about things like labor practices, community engagement, and of course, DEI. And also here, maybe you can think for yourself a little bit how you would actually measure it. So what is diversity? If we talk about we want to be more diverse as a company, then actually how do you measure it? Is it measured by the number of people that you are hiring, about the gender composition of your workforce? Is that diversity then? But what about inclusion? So there are many different ways you can go about it, and that is just very difficult. Um, Governance, then, that's usually when we talk about governance, we talk about ethics, or actually ethics protocols adopted in a company. Is there, for instance, a whistleblower policy or not? But also the board independence. Should the board be independent? Other ways for compliance, etc. And as you just mentioned, and I think you already get a feeling of this, that it's just extremely complicated and diverse. There are many reasons, and I can go on for this forever, so I'll try to keep it short. But for myself, I'm interested as an institutional economist between different institutional differences between countries. And I spent some time in Korea, for instance. And here we can see that, for instance, board independence is not a main thing for companies. They have no tradition in it. They do not care too much about it that there are independent board members. Um, But then actually, how is that then a bad thing, or is that a good thing for Korean companies? So my point is that maybe in Korea people look at it differently than Western people would be looking at. So it's also very subjective. So when is something good, when is something bad, and then how do you actually put a number to that, or can you put a score to that? So there are ways to give scores to ESG, and that is a way that's being popularized. But also we should be very mindful that it's actually extremely complicated, and that putting just a simple score to something complicated as sustainability does not always do justice. But it may be one of the ways we can work with it. And another way, of course, is that it depends really on the company and the company's industry when something is actually more important than not. So if you're an oil company, then I can imagine the environment is very important for that company. But maybe if you're an services company, if you have an hotel chain or something, then maybe the social aspect becomes more important for your business actually. So as a way to deal with it and to actually prioritize or focus on sustainability aspects that are most important to your company, we often talk about materiality. And materiality in sustainability reporting is a way to look at the sustainability issues that are most significant to the stakeholders, so the outside scope of the company, and internally, so to the company itself. And then that way, we often talk about the so-called double materiality. And this is really kind of the backbone of sustainability reporting. So this is really important to understand. And I think personally, it's a nice starting point for a company to even start talking about sustainability reporting, because it kind of forces the company to make a certain priority in a hierarchy of the issues that are really important, given that sustainability issues can be as many as 100 different topics. Then actually, what are the topics that you really want to focus on? So this is an example that I found. Um, so we can see on the horizontal axis, we have the impact on business or the importance to business. And on the vertical axis, we have the importance to external stakeholders. And we can see that if a topic is on the right top side, that means it's both important for the stakeholders and for the business. So those are really the key areas that a company should focus on, because it can help the company themselves, but also hopefully it can help the society most. And then topics that are kind of in the left bottom corner are usually the topics that are not really prioritized, and maybe this should be picked up by other companies. For them, maybe it's more important, and actually they can help society more by focusing on topics that are most important for themselves. So this company, maybe it could be a company running a dam or something, because water footprint is seemingly one of the most material topics for them. I did my own study on this. This is an academic paper that is still in review, but I just wanted to share some of the key findings from it. So usually, sustainability issues can be reduced to about 27, 30 different topics. That's what we found in our study. And you can see here some very general analysis what we have found so far. And I believe those slides will be shared later, so maybe you can hit pause, or you can take a screenshot now, because I think there's a lot of interesting information in here that is impossible for me to explain now, because otherwise we will run out of time for sure. But just one of the interesting things that I want to share with you is that if you look at the right top side and we actually look at the issues that are mostly prioritized, we can see customer, products, and management. Of course, this is a bit tricky, because is sustainability really about improving customer products and management? Maybe not. So I think there's a warning here. We can see that more environmental topics, you can find them at the green dots. They're in the left bottom side of this matrix, and that means they are less prioritized by companies currently. Of course, I looked at diversity and equal opportunity. Maybe you found it by now, because I think this is the most relevant topic for today's presentation. You can find it still. It's a big red dot. You can find it somewhere in the middle. So I hope you'll find it by now. So that means that sure, it gets some priority from companies, but definitely it's not a hot topic for most companies. So maybe in this project you can try to change that. All right. Then the reporting process. So how is the report compiled? So companies now have identified who are the relevant stakeholders, what kind of data should be included, what are the most important material issues for the company. Then usually it starts from data collection. Again, this is a very complicated process because companies usually don't have the instruments or know how to do this. Once they have gathered the data, they usually adopt one of the reporting standards, and that really provides some basic guidelines for companies how to perform a sustainability report. And as you can see from this graph as well, we can see that over the last, let's say, 10 years, companies have been increasingly adopted those reporting standards. And I think that's a good way because it really starts to structure the sustainability reporting, and that's a way how sustainability reporting can become more mature. And often, or actually not often, there's an assurance process. And assurance process is really about having a third party looking at your sustainability report and kind of validating and checking your data. So this is a very hard requirement in financial reporting, because you can imagine that if a company starts to disclose their financial information like sales, of course it should be reliable. Otherwise, there could be severe implications if they start lying about the data. But in sustainability reporting, obviously, and I did my own study on that, we can see that less than half of the reports actually even have an assurance process. So this is very problematic because that means that companies, they can just publish put out there what they want, and there's not really third party actually checking and validating what they are stating in those reports. So again, this is a big issue currently in sustainability reporting. That's something I will highlight in the next slide in the challenges. So for the challenges, I think there are three main things that we have to be very mindful of when we talk about sustainability reporting. First is the regulation. So sustainability reporting still mostly is a voluntary process. And this has resulted in a wild west of a lot of unstructured data. Me as a researcher myself, I've been using sustainability reports for my academic studies, and I have had a lot of frustrations with it because it was just so unstructured and so difficult to find. And yeah, this is I think one of the biggest challenges currently in the field of sustainability reporting. Fortunately, we have now the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive that is changing the field in two ways. So first, it is actually making it mandatory for certain companies to report on sustainability. It starts from the large companies, but eventually in a couple of years, also the SMEs have to start reporting on that. And I've spoken with some SMEs. For them, it's creating a lot of uncertainty and a lot of stress because they don't really have the know-how or the tradition to publish on sustainability reports. Often they also don't really have a sustainability department. So large companies, they obviously by now, most companies, large companies, they have a sustainability department where there's knowledge, where they know what to do. But a lot of SMEs, they just don't have the capacity and people for it to run. So this requirement coming after them creates a lot of stress. So currently they are really dependent on consultants and accountants that can do it for them. But of course, that's very expensive. So for SMEs, I think this creates a huge challenge and burden, and this is something that hopefully you can also think about in drafting your project, how actually SMEs can go about this new requirements coming after them. Impact then, of course, we want sustainability reports to be impactful, but still we can see that ideally, we want companies to go beyond compliance. So even if it's regulated by now and if it's mandatory by the EU, we do not want that it's just a tick of the box exercise where companies just do it because they have to do it. They draft it, they send it out, and they are done with their duties. Really, I think a more ambitious kind of desire is to really try to understand and see how we can make sustainability reports to become more impactful. So how can they really contribute to genuine sustainable development? And one of the ways here, I think that could be interesting is that to offer more assurance. What I mentioned before, most of the reports, they don't have a formal assurance process yet, so there's no one checking what they're actually publishing, if that makes sense or not. And this is something I think that is a requirement to make sustainability reporting more impactful as well. And then we come to the last slide, and that's also a bridge to my own passion and purpose and mission then. So what I would try to achieve with my platform, with my startup, is to advance public assurance in sustainability reporting. And perhaps I should explain public assurance. Usually assurance, that is a consultancy, so one of the big four consultants. They check the report, they say, okay, this makes sense, they give it a stamp and it can be sent out. But then still, I believe that a lot of people are still not actually accessing those reports. Those reports are hundreds of pages. I can also imagine to those listening that you have something better to do than reading all those different reports. But still, I think as a way to empower people and to force companies really to, to be a bit more careful about what they're publishing in those reports. It would be great if the public can actually start to look more into those reports and actually try to see what companies are claiming that they do. And I believe that if we can check them more as the public more generally, the companies also become perhaps more mindful of what they publish, and hopefully this leads to real and more genuine ambitions from those companies. So how does my startup try to do it? First of all, is to provide a free resource. So it hopes to make it easier for people to access reports. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we have the largest database, and it's free to download reports, 5 per day. But another innovation, and of course, this is the era of AI, is that we have developed a librarian. So you can really ask it for custom question, and I think this can be an interesting tool for your own projects as well. For instance, if you have to draft some DEI policy for an SAP, then you can use this librarian to ask maybe first how other companies are doing it, or if they talk about DEI, how do they actually specify it? How do they measure it? What is what is a good DEI policy for them? So you can see in this example, this screenshot that I made, I asked for an overview of the DEI policy of some Finnish company. So first, what it does is to correct my grammar mistake, which is always good. Finnish should be with two N's, of course. But then actually it starts giving some examples and some information. And what's nice is that it provides a link, so you can just click on it and then you get to the page and you can download the report yourself, and you can actually validate the answer, which I think in an AI era is still important to check this data. One disclaimer here is then that it's still in beta. We're working hard to improve it. It might not always be stable, so just be mindful of that. But I really hope it can be a tool, and obviously it's free for you to use. So on that note, I will end this presentation. Hopefully it was helpful to you. If you have further questions, I'm always happy to hear more from you, and you can contact me by one of those two emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kees. Absolutely wonderful insights and very, very helpful. And I think your presentation helped us to understand further, because I think as sort of we all know that everyone talks about sustainability, and it seems that there are so many regulations and frameworks and reporting and obligations and so on and so forth, right? But as you showcased, that especially topic of DEI, you can easily escape. And I love this paper. I'm really looking forward to read it. I hold fingers crossed that it goes for print now very soon, because where your bubbles and where the DI stands, right? Because I was just recently talking with one company who are doing fantastic work otherwise. They're a circular company doing a lot of reporting, and I was inviting them to the hackathon. And they go and say, well, but we did, and I know they really do it genuinely. So this reporting, because they are sort of into this ecosystem building, and they go like, yeah, but we did this double materiality study, and of course, based on the business we're in, we don't have child labor, we don't have anything. Of course, we're engineering, well, female, male, balance, okay, but we're kind of okay about that. So actually, DEI is not really important to us. So it kind of fell off. And that's why when doing these reports that are obligatory now, because they're a company that, that they are supposed to report. And I was inviting them from the perspective of looking at their supply chain, like how do they collect data from their suppliers who are smaller companies? And they go like, yeah, we actually don't even ask to collect them about those things because, well, it's out of the scope. Like we focus on environment. This is where our priority is. And I think your presentation very nicely elaborated on this, that actually, while we have those frameworks, it's so easy to forget the topic, right? And after all, we do have then remaining problems like hiring biases, like inclusion, and so on and so forth. And within all these legislations and frameworks, we're still able to avoid it. So thank you for elaborating on this and also showing, that even these assessments and where the focus goes, because I think that's super helpful for us to understand, that it's a big job for us in this project, as you said, to really think of why it's important, because after all, then, it doesn't necessarily solve the issues, or it doesn't necessarily motivate companies to do the job.
And I think you're making a very good point. I think the issue at some it's a beautiful aspect, right, of sustainability, that it kind of tries to cover everything. It tries to cover some economic, some social, some environmental, some DEI, of course. But of course, the risk and the real implementation of sustainability is that companies become highly selective of issues, and for all the other issues they will say like, no, it is of course we take care of it, and it's important. But then still and that's why I'm a fan of the materiality assessment, because it's really a way for companies it forces them to be a bit more honest about actually what do you really prioritize and what do you don't prioritize. And that's also what I try to do with my systematic study, where we covered about 600 global companies to really see where then the different topics are, and DUI is something in the middle, but I don't have them on file or in my head right now, but we can of course see different country differences as well. So which countries or which companies or which countries do prioritize DUI more often. Maybe I can share them with you later.
Super. No, please do. When the paper is
Yeah.
out, I would be very much interested, and even would include it in the readings or something, because I think this is very, very valuable. And we have a question in the chat, I believe, related to this same study. Where did you get the data and how when doing this research?
Yeah, let me just get back to it. So because there's a lot of information in this graph, so maybe now you have some more time as well. So this is a study that is still ongoing that I did with two co-authors from South Korea, where we looked at about 600 global companies. So we looked at the materiality assessments from sustainability reports. That was in a period, I believe, between 2021 and 2023, so a 3-year time period, where we looked at the most recent report, and if it was not there, we went back a year back. Those companies are global, so we just took as many reports as we could find. So it's a rich representation of different companies. And the beauty of that is that then we can actually perform some more detailed regression analysis, where we can see how do the priorities of topics change by country, but also by industry. And this really helps to give us a better understanding also of some local habits. One interesting observation for me personally was that me, as being more focused on Asia, is that local communities, you can see it here in the graph, it's by most companies, it's really not a material topic. It's always in the periphery of what is material. But then in Japan, which actually has a very long tradition of so-called stakeholder capitalism, actually the local communities were prioritized, was the top priority. So through this study, it's really interesting to see how companies in different countries are prioritizing it differently. I hope that answers the question.
Hopefully so. At least I don't see any follow-up question. And please do open the microphone, because now we still have about 7 minutes till the end of the session, and it's very important that you go ahead. I don't see anything in the chat, no new questions at least. Same that we had covered, and in the chat not as well. But please do open the microphone and let's. And I'm happy that actually almost all participants stayed throughout 2 sessions. So we had about 60 of them, and 57 are with us still, even if it's an evening for most of us. It's almost 6 o'clock in Finland, and I believe it's about 5 in Netherlands. So any questions, guys? Please, Kees is there for you. No brave hands. A lot of thoughts. I think your presentation brought a lot of reflection. Hugh, please.
Yes. Sorry, I'm not available in my camera. However, I have a question related to the sustainable report for SME company. So almost our document or books in the university, they write about focal company. So, and they tell us a lot about the benefit, the value, what is why companies should really transparent in sustainable or sustainability and business ethic, etc. And bottom line, a triple line in Paraguay model. But I just wondering about what how about the actually benefit for SME company when they follow sustainable and they make sustainable report. So because for me, for if they follow at least sustainable strategy, so they need to be really balanced, or somehow they make the cost increase really kind of like really much, so how they can have enough money for growth in the future. So yeah, can you explain a little bit about that? Because we are working on SMEs company, so I prefer to have really insight about that. Thank you.
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you very much. As I had in my disclaimer in the beginning, I'm not an expert on SMEs, but I will still try to answer your question. I think your concern that you raise is extremely valid, and that's also what I hear from when I talk to SMEs, is that it is expensive. If you look at our sustainability reports, companies spend millions of dollars just on drafting a report. If you're a very large company, like let's say Samsung Electronics or something, then that's nothing. So you can afford it. But of course, if you're an SME, that you cannot afford it. So I think your question is then, given that it's so expensive, why would you still do it, and what is the benefit from it? As I discussed in the presentation, there are 3 reasons why companies engage in sustainability reporting. First is compliance, and that will soon, in a couple of years, I think, also become mandatory for SMEs. So that's just, yeah, they have to do it. So if you like it or not, you have to do it even as an SME. So nothing there. But I think your question was also about what's in it for them. And then, well, there are 2 reasons left. I think that there is definitely a strategic incentive for companies to engage in sustainability reporting, because it's risks for the companies as well. So if you are dependent on certain resources in your supply chain, for instance, or if you become more aware that your customers suddenly start to care about climate change, or for instance, then I think you can be better prepared for the future. So it's really about making an assessment, looking at all the different assessments beyond just financial risks, but also have sustainability risks. Because for companies, sustainability can be really an opportunity. For instance, if you have a green business model, but very often also it has a lot of risks. So if you make an assessment, an honest assessment, obviously, that I believe it can help you identify certain risks, and also identify certain perhaps new opportunities for you, and hopefully then this can create more sustainable growth for you as well. But then secondly, also, I think by showing that you care about sustainability also has benefits for your stakeholders. I think now increasingly, especially in the Netherlands, then I know that a lot of employees now, they're really demanding also from SMEs, from the employer, that they're doing something about sustainability. Otherwise, they will just go to work for a competitor. And in times of employee scarcity, which is a big thing now for a lot of Dutch SMEs, this is actually an important topic. So I think it can definitely help you. Also for an SME, whether it can, it's a trade-off, whether it will bring you more than it costs you more, I'm not sure. But soon, at least for in the EU, that this is no longer a question. You just have to do it. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Hey,
Thank you so much. I have another additional question.
May I
Can
say
I?
one thing before you go for another question? I think this is
Yes.
extremely important. I think related to the hackathon. Kees, thank you so much. And I think what you're pointing to, that this is exactly why we have this task for everyone here to find a way to balance, because it's kind of what we know it's coming, right? But none of us are experts, because we've been talking about sustainability, but we have the frameworks and models that apply mostly to big companies, and we don't have really solutions. And SMEs don't have solutions, consultants don't have solutions. And this is exactly why the work that you guys are doing is so important, because we are finding now ways how to get them prepared, but also not to make them die economically. So this is just one thing I wanted to emphasize. Again, importance of the work that you are doing through the hackathon. And that's why it's going to further, feed into materials that are coming for them, into the tools that we are creating for them, based on the work that you are doing now, and based on the guidance from the mentors like Kees, who are, who can let us, understand the background. But now we all need to work to create new solutions. Kees, are you okay with one more question? I know we are out of time.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you so much. Please go ahead.
No, actually, I because I kind of lost he mentioned about one of the last challenging for the company when they want to issue that report. So I would like to know whether the company, because company small SME company, they have no compliant department to issue that report or track that data. So may I know what services or any partner in the market they have available services to offer for SME company to produce that, and kind of like, I don't know how much cost, but how long it takes for the company to devote for that activity. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and I think a very practical question. I'm not sure I have the answer. Maybe Asreen has something useful to say there, because I think she knows a bit more about SMEs. Currently, I think SMEs are struggling. So this is a very important point that you bring up. There's a shortage of accountants. There's a shortage of people that can actually do this kind of sustainability reporting. So a lot of SMEs currently, they're really stressed because they're dependent on consultants, and we all know that consultants are really expensive. that is the only way. And I know there are other startups and there's new solutions being made that try to make it more cost efficient for SMEs. And I really much hope that this will work. But currently, it's still consultancy and it's expensive. So if you want to create some new kind of business, I think this can be a very promising way. But Ashri, maybe you have something else to say.
No, absolutely. You're right that unfortunately there are only these expensive consultants. And the good news is, of course, that the European Union understands that this is a problem. And there are some projects that they fund, like this one, for example, right? And I know that DIMEC, by the way, the company whom you heard yesterday, they are co-creating, working on another project, also EU funded, where they're working for some sort of a generalized reporting tool for SMEs in order to comply for all these things. So unfortunately, not to my knowledge also at the moment, there are good options, but the good news that there are, projects that are ongoing that are aiming to support those small businesses that, that they could report. And as a part of this project as well, we are working on a digital tool that will be open access and that will be available for SMEs, particularly to reflect on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So within the ESG framework, to tackle the social part with this, if you remember in the opening, I showed this many things. So sort of with the focus on internal workforce. So this one part of the CSRD part where we are looking at creating a tool. And I think, Kees, you are quite modest, but even at the moment, the databases like yours could help, right? So when we don't have these tools yet, SMEs can go download these reports, look how they look, what can be done, and sort of start learning from these open resources like you have created. I think it's also another solution that we sometimes undermine and we don't maybe necessarily consider, but I find it very, very useful, because it's a knowledge base, it's a database, and you cannot always access those reports in one place and in a meaningful way. So I would also point to your own database, looking at alternatives for what companies can do. Yes, they're not SME specific, but still, right? It's a way for them to start developing the knowledge based on what is available.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I can then recommend students also is to, through on my website, you can filter by industry or sector. So you can find relevant companies for you and maybe just look what do they report on DEI and yeah, what does it mean for them, just to get some inspiration.
And maybe one useful thing now, I wonder if I can find it quickly, but in the closing session, we're gonna have a session from EFRAG. So at least I'll put the name of the organization in the chat. And they have created an Excel. Let me see if I can find it and upload it on our website, actually. But basically what they did, they looked at the CSRD initiative, right, for all the companies, and literally kind of created measuring points and at least suggestions very, very specifically. So in fact, we can upload this as a resource to the website, but because now I don't think I can find it that fast on the internet, but there are many measuring points. And actually, when we were doing survey, we were literally looking at this and referring. So what, for example, SMEs need to measure or MNCs need to measure. So it's sort of basically they have translated CSRD directive that Tauno was talking about, related to the reporting, elements that Kees presented to us, and issued an Excel with many measuring points for all the CSRD, these groups, environment, social, governance. And many points include, and these points include, for example, gender balance. They include people with disability. They include, so sort of all these, different diverse, not all of the, that we look at the project. So, but at least some of the main categories are there included as a way for reporting. So, so you may want to look at this EFRAG and this Excel that they've created. So if you look at, measuring points, I think they're called EFRAG's measuring points for CSRD directive, the one that was presented by Tauno and myself in the opening also.
I will take a look at it. Thanks for that suggestion.
Yeah, no, this is super useful. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm cautious of time. Kees, I know we would want to talk to you more, but you're also very busy, and we're grateful that you found an hour with us. Lots of very useful information. And so would you be okay sharing those slides on the website as a resource for the students, or it's better?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So then we can upload your slides also on the website as well. Yes. So thank you for the session today. Wishing everyone good rest of the day wherever you are joining from, and we're looking forward to continue tomorrow.